All right, for those of us that are joining, I am going to put a poll up. If you could just take a moment and answer the questions, please.
Mm.
Oh, you're on mute, Mary.
I did mute, sorry, thank you.
No problem.
While everyone is finishing up the poll, we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So thank you everyone for joining us. Today we have our friends from the Center for Disability Studies again to present to us about MTSS, and this is for families. I am going to now turn it over to them and they will introduce themselves. By the way, my name is Mary Andrews. I am the Associate Director for the Parent Information Center. Thank you guys for joining us and presenting all of this wonderful information.
Well, thank you, Mary, so much for having us. We are very excited to share with you here this afternoon. Ooh, and it looks like we have some exciting poll results. Do those show up for everybody, or is it, because I wasn't sure if I could just see it, or can everybody see those?
Yes.
Cool. Okay, great. Well, it looks like we have a range here, which is really nice. So for those of you that are very knowledgeable, we would love for you to share. And if you're not as knowledgeable, we still invite you to share or ask questions and let us know if what we're sharing is helpful to you or not. So my name's Debbie Boyer, and I work at the University of Delaware's Center for Disability Studies. We house the MTSS Technical Assistance Center, and I'll explain a little bit more about that in a moment, but I want to let my two colleagues introduce themselves. So Dana, do you want to say hello to the group?
Yes. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you're enjoying this beautiful day. My name is Dana Ferrier, and I too work for the Center of Disability Studies. I am a member of Debbie and Christie's team. I've been with them for, can you believe it's been a year, guys? I've been with them for a year. Prior to joining the team, I was a school administrator in a state. So I'm looking forward to sharing more information with you about MTSS.
Thank you, Dana. You want to say hi, Christy?
Hi, everybody. I'm Christy Fry, and I also work at the MTSS TA Center. So thanks so much for having us. We love to talk about this and engage with families. So thank you.
All right. So I am going to share my screen, and hopefully you all are seeing that.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. So you already know where we're from. If you're comfortable and you wouldn't mind putting your name in the chat, and if you're representing your child's district or school, that'll just help us get a sense of where you're from, or if you're here with your family professional hat, you can share that with us too. So thank you. And we're a small group too, so we can be pretty informal. Feel free to come off mute and ask a question. We will have specific pause points as well. So as I mentioned, we're the MTSS TA Center, and we are funded by the Delaware Department of Education, and we provide a lot of professional learning and coaching. Typically, we're working with educators in districts and schools, so we're really thrilled to have a chance to meet with families and really talk about the important role that families play in the MTSS system and implementation process. So I'm going to toss it over to Dana, who'll go over our plan for this afternoon.
All right. Thank you so much, Debbie. So today we're going to explore multi-tiered systems of support, or MTSS, as a framework that's designed to ensure that every child gets the help that they need to succeed. We're going to break down what MTSS is, clear up any common misconceptions that may be seeping out there in the community, and equip you with the key questions to ask educators about how your child is being supported in school. This session is designed to empower you to be an informed partner in your child's education. Next slide. All right. So this Delaware has MTSS regulations, Regulation 508. It's a part of the regulations for special education that previously led a lot of, some of the misconceptions about MTSS, that it was only for students that had individual education programs, or for only the students that needed additional intervention supports. MTSS, or multi-tiered systems of supports, is a way school makes sure that every child gets the right help at the right time, whether it's for academics, behavior, or social and emotional needs. In Delaware, schools use MTSS because it follows both federal and state education laws, like Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA, which requires schools to use proven strategies to help students succeed. Oh, there we go. Yeah, there we go. The goal is to identify and support students early so that they don't fall behind, while also making sure that every child has fair access to learning opportunities. MTSS also helps schools make data-driven decisions, meaning teachers and staff look at what's working and what's not, and then they're supposed to adjust the support as needed. This system is not just about special education, it's about helping all students thrive. So as we go through today's session, we're going to explore how MTSS works, why it matters for your child, and how you can better partner with your schools to ensure that your children are successful. Next slide. Okay, so you can click it so it's all revealed. Thank you. So take a look at this Venn diagram. It shows how 3 important support systems in schools connect. RTI on the left, PBIS, or positive behavior intervention systems. RTI, by the way, stands for response to intervention, and MTSS. So RTI focuses on helping students with academics. It's a step-by-step system that makes sure students who struggle with learning get the right level of support that they need. Positive behavior interventions and supports focuses on student behavior. It's designed to help schools create a positive learning environment by teaching and reinforcing good behavior with different levels of support based on what the students need. Multi-tiered systems of supports is that big picture. It combines both RTI, the academic side, and the PBIS side, which is the behavior side, into one system to support the whole child. Schools then use that information and the evidence-based strategies to make sure that every student gets help where they need. So the Venn diagram that we have presented for you helps to kind of show you how RTI and PBIS really serve as an integrated framework within MTSS, so that it gives a more well-rounded support system for students. All right. So under this umbrella, there are guiding principles that really drive the integrated approach to MTSS. Again, MTSS is not just a plan. It's a way to make sure that every student gets the right support that they need in order to succeed. So here's how it works. Equity is the foundation, right? Equity makes sure that students have access and opportunities in order to achieve success. So that means that every child gets the specific help that they need instead of that one size fits all approach. MTSS also works to remove any barriers that may unfairly affect certain students. That's the equity umbrella. When we're talking about systems, those are the structures that help MTSS work at all levels. So we're talking about at the state level, the district level, school, and the classroom level. Strong systems in our schools help to ensure that the right policies and leadership and teamwork are in place to support students. Included in these principles is data, which helps schools to make smart decisions. Schools should be looking at the things like grades or behavior, attendance, social and emotional well-being of students to understand what each child needs. The data isn't just about tracking, it's designed to help teachers and leaders improve their support systems for students. And the other principle for MTSS, an integrated model, are practices. Those are those proven strategies that teachers use to help their students. MTSS makes sure schools are using high quality, I'm sure you all have heard that before, I'm a parent as well, high quality research-based methods that are regularly reviewed to ensure that they are actually working for students. One of my colleagues uses the line that we want to make sure that our programs and our supports are implemented in ways that students can actually feel, which is really impactful. So those are those policies and practices working in tandem to ensure that students do just that. So when these four pieces, the equity, systems, data, and practices come together, schools can prevent problems before they start and continuously improve how they're supporting systems. So it's a continuum of support, which we'll talk about later. When we think about how students learn and grow, we really can't separate their academics from the behavior or their emotions and their overall well-being. That's why integration is so important in MTSS. It brings all of these supports together, and this diagram really helps to show that into one connected system to better serve every child. Research shows that academic and behavior challenges are often linked. Some children may struggle with schoolwork because they're having trouble focusing or managing their emotions, while others might act out because they feel frustrated with learning. So when schools start to look at both academics and behavior together, they can identify these challenges early and provide the right support before small struggles become bigger problems for kids. MTSS makes sure that schools don't just focus on one part of a child's success. It combines things like high quality instruction, behavior supports, mental health resources, and social and emotional learning to create a strong foundation for all students. Again, that approach that no matter what challenges a child may face, they have access to the right tools and the right support to help them succeed in the school and really beyond. Next slide. Here at the center, we really like this image because it really shows that MTSS really is that umbrella that drives systems in schools. So since we have the integrated system operating as a framework for addressing the needs of students, many initiatives or programs fall under that umbrella. So by integrating the academic and non-academic supports or structures, it helps to increase the effectiveness and efficiency of all the programs involved. It's not just a one more thing.
Did we lose Dana?
Okay. I'm back. I said I just disappeared. I don't know if anyone else found that funny, but I definitely just disappeared.
I was like,
But I'm back.
okay.
I am back.
Yay.
So again, many of these initiatives you may have actually heard in your child's school, but again, it's just that vehicle to help improve what districts are doing for their kids. But again, the goal, as we said, is to give that early intervention for every kid to make sure that the practices are aligned with their needs. Next slide. So here are some of the major shifts of MTSS that are displayed on the screen. MTSS really expands or expounds upon RTI by integrating those three components, the academic, behavioral, and social and emotional needs of kids, and ensuring that even if they need access to mental health supports, it's designed to be proactive with a focus on prevention. So unlike RTI, which is often more reactive, right? You might hear conversations about students taking tests, like preventing that weight.
Sounds like maybe Dana's having some connectivity issues.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you broke up there, just the last thing you were saying went out on us. Well, I can keep us going. Let's see what happens if Dana pops back on. But I think really the big idea of these major shifts of MTSS from RTI that she was starting to share was, even if you think about response to intervention, it waits until we see what the student needs and design strategies around that versus this prevention focus, and where we really design our resources and systems to match the specific needs of students. Oh, and looks like she got bumped off again. All right, well, I'm excited to share this slide. So, you know, we talk about MTSS a lot in Delaware. As Dana said, we have our own state regulations related to MTSS, but it really is a national movement, if you will. And we recently got this information at a national MTSS forum that really all 50 states have invested in MTSS implementation at some level, with almost all 50 states actually using MTSS as that approach to organizing both academic and non-academic or behavioral domains. So Delaware is definitely a state that is really focused on that integrated approach that Dana just talked about, and how important that is when you think about what students need and really looking holistically at the child. And as you can see from this, many states are moving in this same direction with really using MTSS as a way to organize both academic and behavioral needs of students. Looks like you're back, Dana.
Okay. All right. So I don't know what's going on today. It's probably the hot weather outside. No, I'm just kidding. I apologize. So in our state, here is what you see displayed on the screen is the definition for MTSS in Delaware. And again, many of you may have heard the term, but really do we understand? And I'm so glad that Mary showed that poll, but really understanding what it really means for your child. And as a parent, it's so important. You can see here that within this framework, it's really important to have your partnership in order for it to work. And so really how it works is every student is supposed to receive high quality teaching and support in the classroom. Again, that includes the academic side of things, and that also includes the social and emotional learning side of things. In my children's school, they actually have what's called an SEL block, where they're explicitly taught lessons that are aligned with the social and emotional standards. If a student needs extra help, also, schools have proven strategies that's designed to provide that support. Some schools have check in, check out as support. Some schools have peer mentoring programs. I mean, the list goes on depending on what district you're in. But all of those practices are, again, aligned with this definition that it's designed to be a prevention system across all levels to meet the needs of the students. What's also important to note here is that this language about ongoing progress monitoring, that means that schools must continuously check students' progress, looking at data to make sure that the support is actually working and make the necessary adjustments that's needed. So in relation with that, teachers and school leaders, and again, families have to work together to create a learning environment, again, where students succeed. So embedded in this definition of MTSS in Delaware is truly an understanding that MTSS is a team effort and families play a key role in the success of this infrastructure. By understanding MTSS and asking questions and working with your teacher teams and educators in your districts, you can help to ensure that your child gets what they need when they need it. All right. So here on the side, you'll see the MTSS essential components. And these are the essential components that when it's implemented, helps to ensure that MTSS is working for the betterment of students. Each of the essential components work together seamlessly to fully be responsive to the children's needs. So you'll see the tiered systems of support. Database decision-making is key. That whole team-based approach, right? That's not just families, but that's also students as well. They play an integral role in having the agency to advocate for what they need and giving feedback or input if something is working for them or not. This whole idea of a comprehensive assessment system is important because, again, it's that prevention model, right? You might hear assessments being used, if you're anyone like me, 3 times a year, you get a letter home that talks about here's your child's iReady information, or here are your child's MAP score, and this is what it means, your child's performance compared to other students nationally. You know, sometimes schools use that to identify kids who need additional support. You might get information about your child's test grades or standardized assessment grades, all of those things, attendance, behavior, they make up the comprehensive assessment system. And that evaluation and selection of resources, that component is important because if teams are making decisions based on data, then the resources that they select are supposed to align with what they're putting in place for students. Next slide. So here's an opportunity where we're just going to invite you to come off of mute or use the chat, whatever is most accessible to you. And we'd love to hear from you. So what's been your experience with MTSS? There are some guiding questions here, but you know, we're asking you to reflect on if your child has received information about MTSS, or do you even know if your child is receiving support in school? And if so, what does that look like?
And I'm going to stop sharing just to make it easier if people would like to share,
share.
what their experiences are. Have you, as a family member, have you received any information about MTSS in your child's school? Or if you're representing multiple families, have you heard of families receiving information?
I've
Thank you,
I
Natasha.
oh yeah, I've heard of families receiving information, but I was interested in understanding what are the research-based methods that they recommend for students based on whatever behavior or what's happening, because sometimes it seems as if all the teams are coming together, the teachers are coming together, the councils are coming together, but then it's like, what do we do now? Like, it's not as structured as I was assuming it to be. So I was trying to, use this opportunity to learn, like, how do they come up with these particular strategies? I do know they have like a lot of SEL groups where the students were kind of, dependent on the behavior, because every behavior is different,
Right.
Yeah.
like every child is not the same, but I feel like it's a better way that we can strategize how to support them. So, I was thinking, more so the question was, I would like to see more structure to the support. Like,
Yeah.
there's levels. I saw the graph, which was great. There's levels, so I'm trying to figure out
Mm-hmm.
that part.
How it all works optimally. And I thank you so much, Natasha, for that question. And I can tell you're very knowledgeable about what's happening. And I'll let you jump in too, Dana, but that last essential component of MTSS that Dana just spoke about, how people select resources, supports, and interventions, that is where not only are schools supported to look at the data to identify the specific need? Like you said, not every behavior need or social emotional support need is the same. But part of that deliberate selection process is going out to the research and finding evidence-based practices, not only that work for that, but that the school or the district has the resources and capacity to implement. So when we're supporting districts and schools with MTSS, it's matching all of those things. What's the data say about the student need? What do we know that's evidence-based to address those needs? And what are the things that need to be in place for that to work? Like, is there professional learning that the staff need to actually deliver that intervention? Do we need more time in the schedule, or there's some resources? So that's part of MTSS, a deliberate decision-making process to ensure that you're getting the right intervention and you can implement the intervention as it was intended. So we don't tell people specific interventions to use per se. It's more, how do you go through that process to find the right one?
So who's the decision maker in finding the right one?
Yeah, great question, Heidi. So the other piece is the leadership team, right? So in MTSS, one of the other essential components is leadership team. So that team has, and it might be like a tier 2 or tier 3 team if this is an intervention for a student that needs more support, would actually go through that process as a team, look at the data, look at the literature, and come up with a match. So an individual student match, could be like an individual team, but if you're talking about like, hey, we want to purchase this SEL program, or, we want to start a group based on this, the team would be looking at the data and then researching what are evidence-based interventions that relate to that data. And Dana or Christy, feel free to jump in if you want to share anything else about that process.
Yeah, absolutely. And everything that you said, I echo that. And I also want to empower you, because that's the purpose of this workshop, not just to inform you, but to empower you. You are also, as families, as parents, caregivers, we are integral members of the team. So if there is a program that school is implementing, and your child has been identified as, let's just say, eligible for that type of program, you can certainly ask, more information about that, and then also advocate for your child. Let's say your child has been exposed to it, but you've observed that it's not truly being responsive to whatever your child needs. You can then go back to the school and say, I'm noticing that this is not working. What are some other options? How can we work together to explore solutions that are going to be a better fit for my child? And so I love what you're asking. While this presentation is more of just an overview of what are those critical components, we don't necessarily delve further into like the tools or the interventions, but typically schools or districts do have a selection process or protocols that they use to identify what's picked for kids. But I love your question. It's like, well, who is? Like, no, we are also as families.
Curriculum director or what have you. I guess my question, because I work with a very specific population. I work with a very specific population. And most of my folks are within the special education realm. So this actually, I'm really happy to have participated. I understand that this is more of a holistic direction, which is very helpful in understanding what MTSS is, because I really came in, I was that one person who said I knew nothing. That was me. I really, that's why I'm here. I didn't understand.
Yes.
So this is super helpful. But I do want to ask, in the realm of, and I'm trying not to relate it to special education, but more of a general education process, like how are parents, are they in, again, people only call me when it hits the fan. Nobody's calling me because it's going smoothly ever at any given point in 20 years I've been here. So how are our families notified about MTSS and that they have a say? Like how is that happening? And then I'll zip up and let you guys finish.
Yeah.
I can speak. Every district is different, right? Debbie, is that what you're going to say? Every district is different. I'm putting on my parent lens. Typically, my oldest daughter was identified as in need of additional support. And in this case, it was academically. So I received a letter from the school based on the fact that she had been selected, and I also had her data that indicated that she was in need of it. And then they told me, what she would be receiving as far as additional supports, how much time, and that was it. And then I just turned her over to the school. But when I was noticing that when, with assessments, universal assessments, they give them 3 times per year. I was noticing by that mid-mark, after she had received said amount of times of intervention, her data wasn't changing. So then I went back to the school and I said, I need to know a little bit more about what's happening in this support. What type of instruction she's using? What types of tests are you using to monitor change over time? And then they were able to give me more information. I'll just keep that long story short with that, because I had to also make some parenting decisions about, whether she was going to stay in that support group or not. But long story short, it was communicated to me by the school.
And is it based on those tests that you're talking about, like the iReady or whatever those monitoring tests they're doing? Okay, I got you. All right, making sense now.
And also, we talked about that team-based leadership approach too, right? So under MTSS, there's a system of identification. that the teams operate within. And again, you're a part of the team as families. So if caregivers or parents identify or have some concerns, they then partner with the teachers who then are supporting them in observation and that feedback loop. Then it goes to a decision-making team of what that support is going to look like. Parents don't always have to wait for a test to be administered. If there are certain things that you're seeing, again, you are integral in that team approach. You can then work with the school to see it through and identify what supports are best for your kids and explore that together.
So all of those programs are still present, right? RTI is still there. And right?
Not as
Am I
we,
not
so RTI, you know, that Venn diagram is
Yeah.
really under MTSS. So
Okay.
that whole response to interventions and that from the academic lens.
And
it's
tiered.
part- Yes,
Right.
and tiered supports, that's part of their MTSS system. So some people are still saying RTI, but it's really, we don't.
It's really MTSS. Okay.
MTSS.
Gotcha.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I'm so glad to ask you guys questions. I am going to zip my lip because I'm sure that everybody else
Oh,
has.
no. I love it.
Thank you so
I
much
love
for
it.
this.
You're so
It really
welcome.
is so helpful.
Good. And
Absolutely.
Amber, were you about to ask a question?
Yes.
I have a few questions.
Yeah.
I actually work for early intervention inside of a school, an elementary school, and it's hard the families that I work with, they don't feel like they have a voice sometimes or an understanding of what exactly is going on, where they feel comfortable being a part of the quote unquote leadership team. They feel like the information is just, here's what your child is doing, this is what we're going to be offering, and the parents just go along with it because honestly they come and tell me I really don't understand what they're talking about. So how I know it's important for the parents to participate in the MTSS process, but it's hard to participate when they're not being advised of when the meetings are happening, when what the data is showing, and what exactly, when you say data, what are you talking about? What does that look like? What does that mean? They don't understand it. And I'm here just for edification to figure out like how I can take this information and translate it to my parents. Because I'm unsure, I'm not comfortable saying, well, this is how you get to tier 1, this is how you get to tier 2, this is how you get to tier 3. And I had called PIC because I was questioning, like I was told that if the student is in the MTSS process, the parent has to wait for them to get through the process before they can request to have IEP evaluation. So I'm just trying to get all the information that I can to make an educated and professional response, when parents are asking me about this whole thing.
Mhm.
I love the fact that you talked about several things. I heard several things. Among those things, it's like the need for transparency,
Right.
the need for clarity and communication as far as, what does this look like for our district and or our students? Many districts do have, even on their websites, like information about like MTSS or special services. It's always helpful to have that. But when breaking it down, because you also said like parents don't understand what these assessments are, how students are identified moving up and down. I think the biggest piece that parents need to know is, what assessments are you using and why?
Mm.
That's the first thing. What are you using? Why? And then the other piece is, when my child or if my child is identified, what curriculum are you using? What program are you using? What types of assessments are you using to gain information about how my child is progressing within this level of support? You also mentioned special education. So under MTSS, again, it's this whole idea of prevention. We're trying to prevent students from having to have comprehensive programs. But if that's what they need, then that's
Mhm.
what the data is saying that they need. And so as parents, it's just important to know, what are you using it? How can we track it over time? When are we coming back together again to the decision-making entity, right? Like before you put my child into any group, what information are you gaining about that? And how can we circle back before we make these types of decisions? I think that's also the most important thing. Because parents, everyday parents, not going to understand tier 1, tier 2, tier 3.
Mhm.
They're not going to understand that language. It's ultimately, you've identified that my child needs support. Why? How? You know, and what is that type of support going to look like for my child? How often, how long do they have to be in this support? And what will we determine as success for my child after participating in that? I think that's the best way to keep it plain for parents.
Right, because I'm under the impression that they have to complete the cycles, review the information during the cycle times,
Yes,
and still modify during those cycles if they're not seeing progress being made. But by the time you complete all 3 cycles, if they're
yes,
it's almost the end of the school year if you want to request to have an evaluation done, and most time 9 times out of 10 they're not going to do it during the summertime. And then
right.
then some of the parents feel like they're being told they have to go through the cycle again before the evaluation can be completed for the next school year. You know, like you completed the process the prior school year, you're now at the tail end, you want an evaluation, but now you're in a new school year and they're like, oh, we need to collect the data for this school year before we can actually get
Yes,
started. So the parents become frustrated, and
yes,
I'm like, I'm sorry, I really don't know. I probably should, but
yes.
not,
You're
this
here.
is, this isn't me.
I know Mary's dying to jump in, so I
Yeah,
think.
well, I want to give you everything, Amber, and this ain't. But I just want to touch on a few things that you said, because I think, we talked about this when we were planning this training as well. I think a lot of districts and even parents are still in the RTI phase. You absolutely can get an evaluation done with MTSS. And another misconception is that if you have an IEP, then you don't get tiered supports. And we hear that now, and this is all learning for everybody, the districts and the parents. So it's going to be a moment before we get on the same page. But and Amber, feel free to reach out to me, and we can provide you guys with some training. We can do some one-on-one stuff, offline. But I definitely wanted you to know that, at any time you can, in writing, request an evaluation for your child, and they cannot say that we have to complete the MTSS process first. All they need to know is that this child is suspected of a disability, to have a disability.
Okay.
And so, and that was one of the things that I was going to say, was both the evaluation, but also receiving MTSS with the IEP. And it makes sense if you think about it, because the IEP is a support, a support plan. But sometimes those students still need a little bit extra support through those. And then just one more thing, this is not related to the MTSS, but you absolutely can do evaluations during the summer too. So if you ever run across that concern, please reach out to us.
Okay, thank you.
You know what might be helpful? I don't know, Debbie or Dana, I'm not sure which one of you are sharing your screen, but maybe if we skip ahead to slide 21.
I
and
actually have that up.
Yeah, and like
On
let's
my
kind of
screen.
talk through what that looks like and what that means. Because I think that this might help clarify a little bit here. But if you take a look at this is a really great visual to kind of understand so MTSS applies to every student. Okay. It is the system that works within the school. So we're not going to say like some students receive MTSS, some students receive, MTSS, some teachers do MTSS. Every student in that school is an MTSS student. Every one of them receive a multi-tiered system of support. Tier 1 is for every student. So every student that walks through that door, no matter whether they have an IEP or not, it doesn't matter. Every single student is an Tier 1 student. You can
Christy,
see,
we lost your sound. Can you hear us?
oh, yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry. So I was just saying every single student is a Tier 1 student. So you can see that the green here in this visual goes all the way up through all three. So every student receives that, we call in teacher language in school world, we call it like that core universal language, whatever curriculum they're using, all students are receiving that support. Okay. For once they're in that Tier 1, they might find that there are some students who need a little extra, and that is more of a targeted support. So you can see that it's on top of the green. So they don't leave Tier 1. It's in addition to, kind of layered on top of Tier 1. Okay. If they find, and if they are collecting data that shows that even that a little bit more support in Tier 2, and they need a more intensive Tier 3, they're now getting Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. So it really is a layered approach. So I think that I heard just a couple of things that just wanted to make sure that this was really understood, that we're talking about all students are Tier 1. And then Tier 1 is just a little bit extra support on top of that. And then Tier 3 is even more targeted support. A lot of time in that Tier 3, it might be like one-on-one or a very small group that the students would need some support in.
I
Yeah,
love how you said that too, Christy, because this helps to emphasize the whole idea of consistent and equitable support. If
Yeah.
everybody's getting access to it, then the layer, if students are identified as in need of additional support, it's making sure that it's consistent so that they are successful in that core or Tier 1 system. But again, the tiers help people to kind of understand. It's even like the medical model, like you might see a practitioner for a certain ailment that you may have. They diagnose it. That's the data. I see Debbie going flipping to the
I
next.
know, I
They
was gonna go back.
diagnose it.
Wait, no, I can't
And
go back.
then once they identify it, then they'll intervene. They'll give you a treatment plan. It's the same thing, right? So that's the best way, I think, sometimes to like make it plain for families. It's like, we're not going to stop giving your child a high quality experience, but if your child needs more, we're going to make sure that we're treating or supporting using practices that have proven to work for this identified area of need. And
Thank
sometimes it does take creativity, and that's where our families come into play.
I saw your note, Amber, that the visual helped. Thank you for sharing that. I love visuals too. And we have several different triangle visuals, but I heard, Dana, you were referencing this one. I just couldn't make it go
Yeah.
backwards. But I think this one really helps, although I don't like, something that we try not to use now are these very solid lines. You might have noticed in the layer one, they were fuzzy, because, my child might have a Tier 2 need in math, but be really excelling in reading, and then maybe have a behavioral need that's more one-on-one Tier 3. So these lines, we don't want to talk about children as being a Tier 2 child. It's really how we organize those resources so that they're available for all kids when they need it. And sometimes thinking about our health model, because this framework that we use in education was actually adopted from this public health model. So like, you know, we do things for all people that promote wellness and health, that are preventative. And sometimes we need a little bit more. Maybe we need a specific diet, or some concern arose that are physical, we need an additional test. It doesn't mean we stop getting, you know, physicals every year or doing all of those general things that we do for wellness. But this just allows the medical profession to strategically and timely identify additional medical supports we need. And so it's kind of that logic applied to an educational context. So sometimes people relate to this visual too. So I just wanted to share that. And maybe, Christy, it would be good to give the examples of what this looks like in school. You guys are both starting to talk about, you know, how we think about this in schools, but this is a nice visual.
Yeah,
that
yeah, for
emphasizes that.
sure. So this is a really great visual just to show maybe what this might look in math, but this can be applied to, you know, reading, any other content area. But really, when we're talking about this universal tier one, we're thinking about, you know, it should be about 80 or 90% of the students that are having that the success and mastering the content at the tier one level, and thinking about this is our evidence-based curriculum that teachers are using, that the school has adopted, and where teachers are planning, they're teaching the content. This is where you might have heard of universal screeners, where maybe something, a dibbles is a very common one that we hear about. And this happens for all students in that tier one. And it's based on that data, along with some other classroom data that the teacher would collect. You know, how are they doing on any of their assessments, you know, things like that. Then they would see that there's a group of students that, you know, typically you want to stay within that 10 to 15% of your class would receive more targeted information. I'm sorry, targeted instruction. So this is really thinking about when that can happen. That can happen within the tier one, you know, maybe pulling a small group. Sometimes it's taking a small group out of the classroom for that, but it is not in place of the tier one. So when the students are in math time, they should have that whole group instruction, that universal tier one group, and then there should be a time for them to receive some more targeted instruction, some targeted support. Once the teachers have done that, if they find that there may be some students, and again, you know, about 5% of your class, so, you know, each group we're getting small, each targeted group we're getting smaller, that is where a student would need some more, probably, you know, typically you see this as individualized, or maybe with like a very, very small group, receiving some more targeted interventions that are very intense for that student. And like I said, this can kind of be applied to other areas as well. Debbie, if you want to go to the next slide, this is again using this and maybe thinking about a behavior or some kind of support, an SEL support, any, you know, mental health support. It's the same concept. It's the same idea where you're really thinking about what all students are getting, collecting data and what that could look like, maybe using a universal screener or other data that a teacher could collect. And then who needs a little bit more targeted instruction out of that group. And then on top of that, who needs some more individualized groups. So you're really getting so those students that are in that tier three are getting tier one, they're getting tier two, and in addition, they're getting tier three. It's not you're moving out of tier one into tier two, and then, okay, that's not working. So we're going to take you out of tier two and put you in tier three. It is a layered approach. So those students who are receiving tier three, maybe for math or for reading or for an SEL skill, they are getting tier 1, they are getting tier 2, and they're also getting tier 3 on top of that. So just kind of visualize that layered approach that we showed you.
So I just
I
want to
think
pause
that a
here.
little,
Go
I
ahead.
just want to thank you so much for clarifying. The clarity has been amazing for me. I'm just
Awesome.
curious because I see that most of the time from since I've been here, just only a year and a half, like the elementary schools up until like fifth and sixth grade, they seem to be really fifth grade, seem to be really good at implementing this to the T. Being able to have the SEL groups and things like that.
Yes.
But I noticed like at the junior high school level, it seems to fall off a little bit because more staffing than anything. And then when it gets to the tier 3 level, it becomes very sticky to try to get everybody on board or reevaluating after they're claiming to be part of these SEL groups. So to be multiple groups going on, a group for this, a group for that. And then I think it would be better if they would have outside agencies do those as well. Could come into the schools, but because some of it just doesn't seem to be working. The
Mhm.
kids are with the behaviors, it's an
They're not,
overflow.
yeah.
It's
Well,
an overflow and there's a gap. So they would have what they do is like a referral process here. We have a meeting, a teacher team, like a team of 6 teachers will say that this kid has been disruptive, needs help, they're noticing behaviors, blah, blah, blah. And then they'll say, okay, we'll talk about it here. We'll try to get them in a group, talk to a parent, and we'll get back to them and check on them in 6 weeks. I just think that the process is too, that gap, you
Mhm.
know, it becomes chronic now. Now it's chronic because you let it go on for so long. And I don't think
Yeah.
we address it earlier, the earlier interventions. And I think that has a lot to do with the structure of MTSS, the structure of it, and then having these groups readily and already available is some things
Exactly.
maybe I advocate for. You know what I mean? I'm talking about how to
Yeah.
present it knowledgeably, like we need to do, or can we do this? Not making more of a demand, but I wanted to come up with some really good suggestions. So I appreciate
Well,
everything.
and I don't know, Natasha, if you're on a school's team, but you would be such a valuable resource because I really resonate with so many things you shared. The idea of this targeted or tier 2, having it as a built-in system is exactly what you're saying. Having actually interventions identified that we can quickly deploy. Sometimes
Yeah,
we have to look at that data, we don't have a match, but we should already, we kind of know a lot of needs of our students or things that we've seen before and can have those ready to go right away. And then, when something comes up, we don't, then that's when we invest in researching. Now we need a new thing. But that is part of the MTSS framework logic, is that you build those in so they're readily available and you're not waiting for kids to fail or become chronic issues like,
yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
Yeah.
so
One
it's
other
meant.
So I
thing
was
I
thinking
wanted,
maybe I could try to recommend summer MTSS planning for support.
Yeah,
Like, when they do the PDs and stuff, maybe
yeah,
one of the PDs can include, strategically coming up, how would you plan for the year, for principals, not so much as because the principals are the administrators. They're the ones gonna, like
yeah.
you can offer the PD training, but then also structure how to set up the groups. September we set them up, and because September's the first, you could if you can get them early, well, they have to change and they have to go here and then, keep parents abreast. And then the practices too that are
Mm.
already supposed to be in a tier 1 is not happening.
yeah. And just to clarify also, Natasha, just in the it's Delaware Regulation 508. If you wanted to look up the regulation for MTSS, the regulation does not specify any time. There's no time in there. So when you caught my ear when you said 6 weeks, that's a RTI model, and we are getting out of
Okay.
that. So your district may have set up something like just to be clear and not to like step on
Okay.
anybody's toes or wherever you're from.
Yeah, I'm
But
learning. I'm learning. It's 1.5
yeah,
I'm in.
yeah,
I'm
but no,
learning.
but
And I get to
yeah, so
I'm
some
feeling like I'm
districts,
not.
yeah, I understand. Some districts have kind of set up some some kind of general time frames, you know, of when you might want to see something, and especially when it comes to the progress monitoring and data collection. But you know, if you want to take a look at the regulation itself and what it says, that kind of, you know, that might help you as well. At least guide the conversations within your district to just to kind of continue being clear on what their expectations are. So that's
And
great.
I think
I
we
appreciate
can,
you helping me, all of you guys. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome.
I
we
reached out
really,
a couple of times to see if I can get somebody to talk to the parents about some things too. But I gotta
well,
call back again.
you're always, you know, I know Mary's offered to be a resource. You're certainly welcome to reach out to us. And I believe Mary can send these materials out afterwards, so you guys can have access to this content if you want to use it, you know, when you're advocating in any of your roles or as a family member. So, but we're happy to help support. Yeah, thanks, Mary. So Mary will definitely send it out.
Thank you so
So you'll
much. Thank you.
Of course. And I know I want to give a little bit of time for questions. I'm just going to jump ahead. So one thing because you all have asked a lot about more like what we would call that tier 2 or tier 3 level of intervention, and kind of who decides, you know, what's the structure to make sure this is done efficiently. So you know, there should be a tier 2, tier 3 team in the school that does include an administrator, educators, community members. Natasha, you mentioned like, well, outside agencies would be great to provide these interventions. So if that's the case, having them on this team is really important, because they're really looking at those bigger picture. What interventions do we have? What data are we using to match this? When we're talking about, you know, a student who has like an individual behavior support plan or an IEP, that's the lower part of the screen. That's where there's a team wrapped around just one student. So I have an IEP and my teachers participate, my family's on the team, you know, there's maybe other staff that support me. So when we're thinking about teaming at tier 2 and tier 3, there's many times 2 teams, one that's looking at overall system, and then one team that's just wrapped around that individual child, if that makes sense. All right, and I'm gonna actually just jump ahead. We did include in here questions that you can ask the school, or you can empower families that you're working with to ask the school to get more information. There's also a resource that PIC has that we can make sure that's in this when Mary sends this out, that has a great list of questions too and breaks down MTSS. So this would be another, I think, a great tool for you guys.
Oh,
So
wait. Can we go back to that? Are you gonna
yes.
put that in the chat so we can I see it? The other screen, the one you just had up?
I will put that in the chat. Let me stop sharing.
Oh,
Because really the last slide was just if you had any questions for us.
Okay.
I have it up. Let me put that in the chat for you. Hang on. Here we go. So does anybody else have any questions or any other questions we can quickly help with? There we
Hi,
go.
Debbie. This is Kathy with Parent
Hey.
Information Center.
Hey, Kathy.
And you were asking about experiences. So I did want to share with you. So I work with youth in the foster care system. And my experiences with schools around MTSS has been really, really positive. As I start to gather more information, I'm having educators really be able to give me very specific information about how they're supporting the student. What I wanted to share with your team, kind of, and that's the background of it, is I often find that I'm a vehicle for educating the child support team who's with the child in foster care about MTSS. So the schools are sharing their information, and I know that because the child's in foster care, they don't have a parent really monitoring that. So what I find is there's a lot of the older style thinking that every time there's a problem, we have to have an evaluation for special education services. And when I do my research, I find out that a lot of these youth are getting MTSS support, and those on the child support team, the Division of Family Services worker, the child's attorney, and others just don't know that. and they just automatically think special education. So I wanted to share that with your team. I don't know if they're, I'm sure you're more than busy, but if you're looking for others to educate or have trainings with, even judges in the court system, automatically think every time there's and I'm talking sometimes there's a disability related issue, but very often it's absenteeism, it's a child who's cutting classes, things like that that are not necessarily disability related, but they think special education. So I just wanted to share that again, my experiences, and I deal with all of the school districts. All of the ones that I've dealt with throughout the state have been very forthright, very informative with their information and their data, but it's kind of getting the education out to a lot of other folks who aren't in the education world, but who are supporting a child in the education world, that maybe MTSS is actually what the child needs and will meet their needs, rather than always having it. And in some cases, yes, an evaluation for special education services is needed, but I very often am finding now, especially because MTSS, there's more knowledge around it, there's more experience that the schools are having, that in many cases it is very more than satisfactorily supporting a student. So I just wanted to share that with all of you, and also thank you for the information that you have shared, because it is really, really helpful, and I'll be eager to also get the materials when they're sent out, because it just will help me as I'm sharing information with others.
Well, thank you so much, Kathy. First of all, thank you for sharing that. You're hearing, your experience with schools has been positive, and that's a really great point, that maybe we haven't educated the other individuals who are supporting young people in our schools. So I can take that back to other leaders to think about how we can, expand our professional
That would
learning.
be great.
Yeah, thank you. Well, and I realize we've expanded beyond the end time, so thank you guys so much for sticking around. I don't know, Mary, if there's any other closing things we need to do, but I'm just very grateful for all of your engagement and your commitment to really supporting children and working with the schools.
Well, thank you, Debbie, Christy, and Dana had to jump off. Okay,
Yeah.
well, thank her for us.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for joining us. This was a really good conversation, and I was glad to be a part of it. Everyone will receive a survey. If you could please fill that out when you receive it. I will, send it out again with the materials, probably before the end of the week. So if you have any questions, we're always here. If you would like us to connect you with CDS also, let us know. But other than that, you guys enjoy the rest of the day. I'm sorry, did you say something,
I'll be
Natasha?
reaching out.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Who do I reach out to do some
Me,
discussions
Mary.
with, or trainings to our parents? Miss
Yeah,
Mary, I'll be calling you.
Mary. I did get your email and I responded. I don't know if you saw it. About
No,
the
but I'm gonna
event
look
you
for
had.
it when I get off the
Yes,
phone. I am.
yes.
Yes, I am.
Well, I'm
Okay,
here,
thank you
so
so
let me
much.
know. No problem.
Yes, ma'am. I'll let you know
All
by the end
right.
of today.
Okay.
Thank
Have a
you,
good one,
everyone.
guys.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.